Agora você irá assistir a mais uma história daquelas que não querem que você saiba. Grandes governos e agências internacionais escondem a verdade de nós por anos. Mas aqui no Conhecimento Secreto, iremos revelar todas essas informações. Então, já se inscreva no canal. John Lear, um ex-agente da CIA, afirma que os Estados Unidos e outras grandes nações têm conhecimento de seres extraterrestres. E nesse vídeo ele conta algo surpreendente, que OVNIs teriam sobrevoado a Casa Branca, e que a própria CIA teria encobrido o caso, e que testemunhas por medo de serem ridicularizadas não testemunharam mais o fato. John Lear vem fazendo revelações sobre casos extraterrestres, alertando aqueles que não acreditam e reforçando que as grandes nações escondem segredos. John Lear fala sobre pilotos de caças que foram abatidos, sobre o conhecimento do governo e da agência, que hoje é a responsável por toda a pesquisa alienígena, MJ-12. Ele faz revelações de vários ex-presidentes e que tiveram o conhecimento sobre o assunto. Então agora iremos assistir ao depoimento de John Lear, o ex-agente da CIA.
I was going to tell you that a lot of Air Force pilots and planes have been, the pilots have been killed and the planes destroyed. The first one was the Thomas Mantell crash, January 7th, 1948. He was in a P-51 and he was chasing a flying saucer, ordered to chase one, and he got up to it and said, "Oh my God, it's huge," and that's the last thing they heard of him. 1948 was the second crash of a flying saucer near Aztec, New Mexico. 1950 was the third crash near Laredo, Texas, about 30 miles inside the Mexican border. 1952, we had 2 weekends in a row where the UFOs flew over the Capitol, Washington, D.C., buzzed the White House. Despite pictures and radar confirmations of the objects, the Air Force said it was a temperature inversion.
Now, did this ever make the newspaper back in 52?
It made all the newspapers, but it's been such a fantastic mental programming that we've been forced to forget this. It was in the papers. It was one of the most spectacular UFO events in history. 2 weekends in a row.
In the newspapers, I don't know if you've gone back and looked at the newspapers from that era, but how did the newspaper people explain what it was?
They told the Air Force line it was temperature inversion, but they had pictures of them, and it was just said it was temperature inversion.
And what happened after that? What's next?
The government established an intensive program of ridicule against anyone who said they saw flying saucers, and fear of ridicule was the foundation on which the cover-up was placed. Nobody likes to be ridiculed, and they built that fear into anybody so that nobody would talk about it.
John Lear ainda fala sobre o ex-presidente norte-americano Eisenhower, e foi um dos últimos presidentes a ter total conhecimento de todos os fatos alienígenas, e até mesmo reuniões com os mesmos.
1952, Eisenhower was elected. He was briefed by Hill and Cotter. Eisenhower, being military, took steps to ensure that the secret was kept. Because of his military background, he made it more military-oriented than, say, a civilian president would have. And it's this, I think, that has his actions let the real power of the executive office slip through the hands of the president into MJ-12.
And we've got a copy of, I think, outside of that document where Eisenhower is briefed in that.
He was briefed, and he set it up. And interesting thing, in late 53 or early 54, Eisenhower witnessed an alien demonstration of technology and power at Muroc Dry Lake, which is now called Edwards Air Force Base.
How do you know that? How did you get that?
We have witnesses who were there.
Who's saying President was there seeing?
The President was there. There's an English guy. He passed away. He either passed away just recently, but before he did, he was the last living person who was present at that meeting. And he said that Eisenhower told the aliens that the world was not ready for him. And nothing happened until the first part of the 60s. Several more crashed in the 50s. In 1960, Kennedy was elected. Eisenhower was the last president to have a full briefing on the alien problem. There was a disdain of elected officials throughout the intelligence and military communities, and they just didn't like elected officials. So every president since then has not had high enough clearance to know the whole problem. Now they know there's aliens, they know we've recovered saucers, and they know that we're trying to get technology. But there are certain other things which probably only about 25 people on the face of this earth know.
Agora fato histórico narrado por John Lee. Ele fala sobre quando foi a primeira visita, ou podemos dizer, reunião oficial entre o governo americano e os aliens.
Now, on April 25th, 1964, was the first official communication between our government and the aliens. 3 saucers landed there by prearranged agreement. It was filmed by 5 high-speed cameras, 68,000 feet of film. The reason we know this is because in 1972, when they were going to release the first information about UFOs to the public, a very knowledgeable writer, his name was Robert Emenager, was asked by the agency to write a documentary, which he did. And they were going to release this thing, and we had the whole history of the UFOs, and the last part of the documentary was the footage of the saucer landing. But in 1973, when they're ready to go, we had Watergate. And they were faced with 2 problems. Number 1 is they didn't think the public could handle 2 traumatic experiences at the same time. And number 2, they thought that the public would perceive this picture of aliens and spacecraft as a ploy by Nixon to divert the attention from Watergate. So they shelved it. The documentary actually came out. It was narrated by Rod Serling, but instead of the real footage, they had drawings of these flying saucer landing. And they said, Rod Serling says, let's consider an event that could possibly happen in the future or may have already happened. But it did already happen. But what happened then?
I'm jumping ahead of you here, and we can backtrack.
Em conversa, ele também lembra de uma fala de mais ex-presidente norte-americano, Jim Carter, que dizia que se chegasse à presidência, iria abrir ao público todo o segredo sobre os extraterrestres, pois ele tinha certeza que eles existiam e que ele mesmo já teria visto. Mas de certa forma ele teria sido desencorajado pela equipe de inteligência a não divulgar sobre esse conhecimento ao público.
A second, but the next president after Nixon, President Carter, I remember him as a candidate saying that one of the things he'd like to do when he got into office was to get to the bottom of this UFO stuff, to look into the Project Blue Book files, and to let people know, basically to open it up and let people know if it was a hoax, it's a hoax. If there's something more to it, but he never did that.
No, he said when he was during his campaign, he said, if I become president, I'll make every piece of information this country has about UFO sightings available to the public and the scientists. I'm convinced that UFOs exist because I've seen one. But MJ-12 got to him, and they explained how important it was to keep it a secret. And apparently he agreed with them because we never heard anything from Carter.
Para quem quer acreditar, nenhuma prova é necessária. Mas para aqueles que não acreditam, nenhuma prova é o suficiente. Se inscreva no canal e deixe seu like, pois esse e outros vídeos você só encontra aqui no Conhecimento Secreto.